This is the Angel Cam, and it comes with some instructions. Your cam is a little complicated if it requires a poster to explain how to use it. Or you can just watch this video where we used it, we broke test it, and we'll be dissecting it.
No, seriously? Yeah, it's weird.
So in case you don't know, this is a normal cam, and you squeeze it, and you put it in a crack in a rock, and then you clip your rope to it, and that's supposed to hold you if you were to fall. I explain things like that because the algorithm will do weird things and show this to a lot more people than maybe climbers. Anyways, the Angel Cam has the same lobes, except they're attached to these wings that will expand it. You know what's crazy? Is this is my most requested video ever. Holy moly, there are so many skulls on this instruction pamphlet. I'll make sure we have this on our shop page where you can get it at our store. Now, since I'm not sure how popular these are going to be, since they're more of a novelty piece of climbing gear, I'm not sure how many to stock, so I'm not gonna have too many. If you are interested in them, go to the store and get them while you can. Shall we test this in some real rock? I love doing that. Here's a shallow wide placement, and the number 4 doesn't quite fit there without putting it in like that. And then as soon as you pull down on it, that might not hold. But because those lobes are smaller, it might do okay in there, or not. Since the lobes are smaller, it does seem like an okay placement, but let's find out. After we test this placement, that's in that weird crack, with our setup here going to a tree backed up to our bolt. Let's just start with this. Hey, we didn't damage this. We're getting better at it. 6.58. So it still works. It just came out. Oh wow, look at the teeth on this. That might have held a whipper.
Oh, that was violent. Ooh, can you smell?
I can smell it. 10.98. And I think it still works. Wow, I'm impressed. Just for reference, this is a very wet rock we're testing this in. You can see right here where one of the lobes were. And if you ever use a line scale for this, use something above it to pull this up. So when it breaks, it doesn't smash against stuff. That lobe got chewed up pretty good. So that's the next placement. And that's in there. Woo! What are the damages? Ah, shit. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Why am I holding the tripod sideways?
I'm not sure. Did you crack something? Oh.
The bolt came out. You bolts are not supposed to do that. Holy shit. 11.8. Well, how's the cam? So that piece of plastic right there, that is a guide for the wire, broke off. Hold on.
Does it not to play anymore?
Yeah, but why? That's the only lobe that's moving right now. Oh, that wire is supposed to go right alongside that edge. There's a groove right there. Huh, who knew more complexity could have more things potentially go wrong with it? Ah, fixed it.
How's the bolt hole looking?
Empty. There's no way that could have pulled that out. The rope is supposed to break before that comes out. Shall we test it full spready now? There's a number 4, and there's the full spready. It didn't feel like a great placement because when I put it in, the lobes were good on this side, but it was kind of flaring on that side. 2.27. So that's a decent placement, but I'm gonna pull it this way. Whew. I guess 20, not bad. The rope broke where the soft shackle was on it. There is a lot to unpack in that brake test segment. First of all, no crags were harmed in the making of this video because it's a crap pile of rock close to the road across the street from a rock yard. So if you're worried about the rock, don't be. And that bolt shouldn't come out. Like, the force to catch a line scale is not the 11 or 17 kN that I had on the cam. It's just catching a little bit. You could see at the end, my 0.75 was able to catch the last brake test, and that was 17 kN. I'm just glad nobody whipped on that bolt and it came out. Anyways, as we saw, things will break on this if you, well, put a winch and a 5-to-1 on it. So other than this wire not having the guide anymore, I have never had a cam have any functionality after taking it up to 17 kN. So I'm pretty impressed on the strength.
I am 15 meters over my last piece. Let's see if this angel cam works. This seems like a pretty weird crack. Yeah, that looks like might hold. That is a much better placement, as you can see right there.
I didn't mind having it. It's a little bit heavy to hike in pretty far. If it's easy terrain, I could find something that a cam I have with me will fit in. But my buddy took it to a crag and he put it in, and some placements it was pretty nice to have in, and other placements it would just fall out on him. Now, if you are into novelty stuff and you buy this, then play with it. Play with it a lot with one hand. Figure out how to get it to do what you want. Place it in cracks before your life depends on it, because it'll work. I mean, clearly it works, but you have to be able to identify what is a good placement and what is not, because it is different enough that your previous cam knowledge might not be super good enough. Let's do a top-down view and get into the weeds on how this thing works. So from here down is all plastic, so you don't clip to this, and that is a really clever way of making sure people don't. So after you place the cam in the crack and you get it where you want it, you would pull this out and you would clip to this, which is going through the head of the actual core of the cam. Spoiler alert on later's brake tests. So it looks to be around 5.5 millimeters. And it has Technora in the middle, at least that's what it looks like, because of the way it tears when it breaks. It's tied in a double fisherman, and the nylon will melt, and they melted it over the end of the Technora, but the Technora itself does not melt. So the loop of cord freely rotates inside of there. You just want to make sure that this or the tail doesn't get in the way of this clip that keeps it attached. So when you do have it clipped to your harness, it's not flopping around like this. So if you flip this orange lever, then it opens the gears here, and that is what allows you to put it back. And I just usually push it up against something, and then I clip it back with my middle finger, and that is how I use this with one hand. Otherwise, every time you see people using this on Instagram or whatever, they go like this, and they're taking two hands, and they're playing with it, and they're holding it, and they're clipping it. It's really important that you practice this with one hand if you're going to be using this while you're on lead. Now, if you flip this lever back, it closes those gears right there, and the force of this wire coming down is trying to pull it outward, and as soon as it disengages from those gears, it opens all the way up until it meets the width of the crack you're in. If you open this back up, it spreads it apart, you push it up against something, you close it, and you're back at the beginning. Now you can just manually make this happen. You can just lift this up. There's nothing stopping it from going that way. But when you have it in a crack and it's pushing back, the gears are all working together. It's not going to get pushed back unless it opens up and has that space, but that's not going to happen in a crack. But this trigger is pulling this that way, and the orange one's going through this groove right here that you can see, and it's pulling it that way, and it doesn't take that much to disengage or open it in the way that goes till it fits in the crack that you want. So an offset or a hybrid is where these two lobes are bigger than these two lobes, which is great when you're in a crack that's not even, and so the back of the crack is more narrow than the outside of the crack, and so this ends up fitting really, really well in those types of either pen scars or just depending on the shape of the rock is. The problem with these is they don't go up very big. As far as I'm aware, I don't believe there's any large cams that are offset. And so to have something that does fit in an offset is where one of the places these shine. Now this is a 0.75 C4 from Black Diamond, and that goes in that crack really well. Now when compared to the Angel Cam, in theory it is the same size, but I found after using it, it wants to open up on you, and then you got to open this up, push it against something, close it, but you're trying to barely squeeze it in order to get it in there, and then, maybe I didn't close it all the way. Just squeeze enough to get it in there, and it'll go. And this is actually bomber, even if you pull to the side, as you'll see later in our brake test, because it's pulling from up here and not down here at this rigid plastic part. However, I'm finding it very difficult to pull out of real rock, even though it works quite well in this demonstration. So it seems pretty hard to get out when it's in the tight spots, and it's also pretty hard to get in. Ah, I got it. Now on a traditional cam, the trigger wires are pulling the lobes down, but what makes the cam want to go back up are these springs here. The springs on the Angel Cam look like this, which I've never actually seen on a cam before, but they do have the space here to work with, so I think that's maybe why they do that. Now you can see that that trigger wire is a little bent up, which is pretty normal, But this trigger wire also kind of being exposed out into the outside has a little fraying going on just after one use. This was not because of a brake test we did. Now, when you place this and you like where it is and you're like, that'll hold me, you really need to know which direction you're going, because if it's going this direction, you have to make sure it's on this side of this stem. But if you have it on this side, that's fine too, and it'll go over the other side, but not on its own. And if it gets stuck on something or gets stuck in here or goes on the other side, that might damage it. Now, this is a pretty good demo. The 0.75 obviously fits in there really well, but the 4 doesn't, because the total width of this from the lobes is about 67 millimeters, and this is just under 55. So therefore, it fits in shallower, wide cracks, as you'll see in our brake test later. Now, this 2013 C4 is 285 grams, and this thing is 282 grams. And the 0.75 is only 108.
So I always joke this was a 3-for-1 deal. You get about 3 optimal sizes out of something that costs 3 times as much and weighs 3 times as much. But I was comparing it to a 0.75 when I was joking about that. It actually does weigh close to what the number 4 is, and you do get a little bit more than 3 sizes out of it if you're willing to fight it back out of the crack. Now, these do not get stuck quite like a link cam did. Now, walking is when you go up and down, up and down. This is not what you want to do with this cam, because there's so much motion and movement here independently on those arms that you would probably lose a solid placement. And I mean, we did have a few cams just fall out of the crack. But if you get a good placement with this, it will do things other cams won't. Do you need an entire rack of these? Hell no, you do not. I could see somebody having one of these on their racks. And what's kind of nice is 2 places I personally think they'd be useful. One, you don't know what you need at the anchor, and so you kind of want to use what you got. If you have something on your harness, use it first that you know goes in there. Don't grab the Swiss Army knife of cams. Another place these actually would be nice that I haven't seen anybody bring up yet is when you're doing C1 awkward aid climbs on El Capitan, where it's kind of just one big flare and you're like trying to wedge your body in it and put a cam in. And the offset thing that I told you earlier, like offset cams don't come in this size. So if you can have this flared out quite a bit and this one only flared out a little, you can just keep bumping and shoving that cam all the way up that awkward aid climb.
What the is going on here? No, but like for real.
What do you think of the Angel Cam?
High quality piece of gear. You only need one for an entire route. Everybody should buy them.
Trying to get a free one?
Buy them off of his website.
You will hate this cam for the first couple hours you're using it. But after you get used to squeezing it, pushing that orange lever down, pushing it against something, and clicking it back, if you don't practice that and you start doing this on lead, you're gonna die. Let's go yank on this in our slow pull machine and see what kind of shenanigans we can do.
So the first test I'll do in here is just pretty much what we were doing outside. We're just gonna pull straight on these 2 granite plates inside of this form. Wow, I broke it in the lab, but not outside. Well, there's a lobe. So that pin is supposed to be in there, I think. And this was around that part, but it bent. This leg is fine, but the lobe seems to be stuck. There we go. That wire was stuck under there. So now it's 75% is safe. It was only 9K in. So I just clipped these 2 sides, so it ends up sitting cockeyed. So the cam's gonna get pulled sideways. But instead of orientating this the way I should, and this is a replacement for what I broke outside, I want to see what happens when it crosses over the actual stem. So Dyneema slips in a double fisherman at 10.39, and it gets real hot. This actually held up better than I thought it would. So now let's dissect the thing and see how it's put together. So it's interesting that all the lower half is just purely plastic, and it does take quite a bit of force to get these to move against that spring as the spring is attached on the sides. So even though it's just two plastic flanges holding together these side beams against the center, that it's holding it quite tight. And this is just a solid plastic straw. There's no cable inside or anything that you're basically shoving up through that center hole by utilizing this lever mechanism. So on this type of cam, you can see there's 2 axles on this one, but they're pretty small. And so being able to have such a large axle, which is more or less the weak part of any cam, is probably the advantage of what makes this so strong if placed really well. Probably can't see inside of there, but this screw basically goes into that, and this plastic doesn't allow this to go left or right, so it's actually pretty solid in there, even though these side components feel loose, and it's only really being held up by the little plastic arm that's being pushed up against from the spring. That's, you know, pretty good solid setup. It's very interesting how this is made.
So I reused part of the cord here, and I still have life in this one. I'm gonna save these, and I'm gonna wait for your comments to see what I should do with them in the brake test machine.
And if we break them, you won't want to miss that, so make sure you sign up for our emails so you see what's coming out and you don't depend on the algorithm to let you know.
If you guys are actually interested in more cam tests, we tested the ultralight from Black Diamond, and we actually got to go to their lab where they created this with the people who created it. So if you'd like, you can go check out that video next.